Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of 2D Prototyping in Unity. My name is Kasanas. In the last episode, we built ourselves the projectile that our character is going to eventually be able to shoot out. It's a little rocket with a little bit of smoke coming out the back. Let me just click on it here so we can actually see it. A little bit of smoke coming out the back. That was what we built, and we only built the actual physical assets. We did not include any code or anything like that to be able to make it move. In fact, if I hit play, all that's going to happen is it's going to fall off the screen. Alright, so there's a couple of things that we're going to need to do next. We really want this thing to be able to fire out of the character's gun, so somewhere around here, whenever the player pushes the fire button. And we're going to use the left mouse click to be the fire button. So whenever the player presses the fire button, we want this rocket to shoot out. We want it to fly away from the character at a certain speed. We want it to be able to hit something and explode. Alright, there's a whole bunch of stuff we're going to need to do in this episode, so let's get started. Okay, so in the last episode, like I said, we built the projectile, and we broke it up into several different parts. The projectile itself, which is kind of like the envelope that's going to be carrying everything. Our missile, which is basically just the graphic itself as well as a collider that's going to allow us to hit things. And lastly, the missile smoke system, which is going to be a smoke trail left behind. Something pretty added to our actual object. Now, the projectile itself is where our rigid body is located. A couple things. I just hit play and this object fell off the screen. It just kind of fell away. And that's fine. That is based on this gravity scale right here. We currently have our gravity set up to a specific thing. I think we have it set up to 30. But our gravity is set up right now. This gravity is going to be acting on this object 100%. So 1 times our current gravity. And you really have a choice here. You can leave this as it is, meaning you can leave it as 1 and it's going to fall relatively quickly off the screen. When we set up our jump, we set up our gravity to be pretty high, so it's going to fall off the screen pretty quickly. In the game that I created, actually had this set to 0. And what that means is that gravity is not going to affect my rigid body. So this rigid body is not going to be affected by gravity. And you might say, well, why do you have a rigid body? Well, I'm actually still going to use forces to propel this thing along. So I'm going to leave it. I'm still going to use the rigid body. You didn't have to. I could have actually directly manipulated the transform in order to make this thing fly off the screen. But I'm going to go through it and use the rigid body instead. So I'm setting the gravity to 0. If you want to, in your game, you can say, you know what, I want my projectile to have a certain amount of fall. So if you want to, let's say you want to be able to arc this object, so you want to be able to shoot over a wall or something like that. You could give it a gravity of, let's say, 0.1. It doesn't really matter what you choose. Now when I hit play, it's still going to fall, but at a much slower pace, all right, at a much slower rate. So if you want to, you can actually add some gravity scale to your object. Like I said, mine was 0, which means it's going to go in a straight line, and there's not going to be any kind of gravitational pull on it. But adding a little bit of gravity to your game on the projectile might make for an interesting change in gameplay. It'll allow you to shoot through a hole and drop down, or shoot over a wall, or something like that. So you guys can really decide what you want to do. And maybe I'll even change it up later on after I've played a bit. But for now, I'm going to leave my gravity scale to 0. Now, the next thing that I have to do is I want to add some kind of force to this object so that the object itself travels away from the character. And we're going to do it in 2 steps. And at first, we're going to simply add a force to it so you can see it fly. And then later on, what we're going to do instead is we're going to add we're going to determine which way the character is facing and add an appropriate force. But for now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to Add Component. And so we're currently on Projectile on the top layer of my rocket. I'm going to say Add Component. And when I do, I'm going to say Add a new script. And I'm going to call this a script. Let's call it Projectile Controller. All right, this is going to be called the Projectile Controller, and we're going to make a lot of changes to it. So let's say create an add. Bam, and when we do, it's going to pop up here, and I'm going to move it immediately over to my scripts folder. All right, now I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to open up MonoDevelop. And it opened up where you can't see it, so let me move it over. Shoop. All right, so What I really want to do in this script is add. I'm basically going to control all the movement that occurs, or all the forces that occur to this object in this script, in this projectile controller. And to do so, I want to affect its rigid body. So the very first thing I'm going to do is right under here, I am going to add a variable, a rigid body 2D, that I'm going to simply call. Let's just call it my RB. All right, and maybe RB. All right, so this is going to be a reference to the rigid body, on my existing object, So wherever the script is, I'm going to go and look for a rigid body. So I'm going to go right here, and when it awakes, I don't have to do it at the start. So using the awake function, I am going to, and like I said, start and awake. I think I described this earlier. Everything occurs as soon as everything starts up, and awake occurs when this object first comes to life. All right. What I'm going to do is in my awake function, I am going to find my rigid body. And we've done this before, so I'm going to find my RB. It's going to be equal to, I'm going to set it equal to the reference get component, get component, and it is a rigid body 2D. So I'm looking for, this line is basically, and we've seen this before, I'm basically looking for the rigid body 2D that is existing on this object. All right? And that is going to give me a reference back to it. So now I can actually refer to my rigid body. Now, right here in the awake function, what I'm going to do, upon awake, I'm immediately going to apply a force to this rigid body, which means I want it to be in motion as soon as it's instantiated. I want a force to be applied to it, and it's going to have this burst effect, kind of like a little explosion. So I'm going to use an impulse force. We'll see what that means in a minute. I'm going to use an impulse force, and I'm going to send this rocket shooting off in a direction. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to say my RB, because we are affecting the rigid body, dot, and I'm going to use the add force. Add force. All right, and add force takes a number of arguments. The first thing it's going to take is a vector 2 that says which direction the force is going to be in. And you know what we're going to do? Well, I'll just do it like this. This is how I did it here. Let me just do this. New vector 2. And it's going to be 1, 0, which is actually an existing vector. I didn't have to do it like that, but anyway, I did. So this means that it's going to be traveling in the x direction only. It's a vector 2. This vector is pointing in the x direction only with no component in the y at all. So it's just traveling in a straight line. So it's currently traveling in a straight line away from my character. All right, and I'm going to multiply this times some force. And if you want to, what you can do is you can come up here and you can add let's add it above because I like my public variables above. You can add a public variable called rocket speed if you want. It's a float. Float rocket speed, and what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to adjust our speed if we want to go faster or slower. And I'm going to come down here and multiply this by rocket speed. All right. So with that in mind, one last thing. Sorry, I did that wrong. Multiply by rocket speed. The next thing I want to do is I want to suggest a force mode. Now you actually have an option here whenever you're adding a force to either add the force depending on how you want to do it. Either like over time, like someone's pushing on something, so a constantly added force. So as long as there's pressure on that object, for example, if you're pushing a giant snowball or a car or whatever, you're constantly adding a force to it. Or you have the choice of an impulse force, meaning it's kind of like an explosion where there's an instantaneous force applied and the object is propelled away. We are going to use the force mode. So we're going to type in here, force mode 2D. And it's going to be dot impulse. So the dot impulse, like I said, means it is like an explosive force. It's rocketed away. All right, so that should be all I needed to do. All right, perfect. So with this finished, with this like this, I should now file save. So I'm going to actually save this thing here. I'm going to come on over to this guy here, and as long as there's no errors, I'm going to see my rocket speed change there. Let's make it 15. It doesn't really matter. You can adjust that value later on. When I hit play, well, watch what's going to happen. My rocket flies away. Perfect. So that's exactly what we wanted to happen. The rocket itself flew off at a particular speed. Let me turn this off. The rocket flew off at a particular speed, in this case 15. Let's try it one more time. Boom. Bam, the rocket flies away, and we can see my particles slowly dissipate, and that's exactly what we want to happen. Great. So that is the first step. That's the first step in creating our rocket. Now, you know what? I'm going to show you that one more time because there's something I want you to see. Watch down here. We've currently got this projectile in place, and that projectile, when I fire it out of the rocket, this projectile stays on there forever. And currently that projectile it's off our screen. See it flying way far away, and that projectile is going to travel forever, for infinity. Now we've got a bunch of different ways that we can actually deal with this projectile that's gone off forever. We could collect it. Anything that goes a certain distance away from the character is destroyed. We could do something like that. We could use a collider that wraps around our character, and anything that goes through that collider is destroyed. I'm not going to do it like that. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an additional script to this actual thing here. And the additional script, what it's going to allow me to do is, after a certain amount of time, it's going to destroy this object. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, once again, add component right down here, and I'm going to add a new script. And this one here is going to be called destroy me. Create an add. All right, great. And if I want to see destroy me, I double click, and we're going to open up my MonoDevelop again, and there it is. Great. Graphical error. Come over here for a second. Come back again. Anyway, that's not going to bother us. Just ignore that. It might not even show up on the video. We'll see. Anyway, guys, so the destroy me is really, really easy. What I want to do is, once again, on the awake, not on start, on awake, what I want to do is I want to set this object to be destroyed after a certain amount of time. And destroyed basically means delete me. Remove me from the hierarchy. I don't want to see it in the hierarchy anymore. So down here, if it goes after a certain amount of time, I want to just disappear, delete it, and refresh the memory, reallocate that memory. There, my thing's gone good. All right, so in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an existing function called, well, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go up here, and I'm going to add a public float value. That's going to be called, let's call it a live time. And I'm going to use this over and over again, this destroy me function. I'm going to use it over and over again for a lot of different things. And it's going to be really helpful because it's going to allow me to put things on the screen for a certain amount of time and then remove them automatically. And it's going to allow me to leave it on the screen for a live time. Now I'm going to use an existing function called destroy. Destroy. And destroy is going to allow me to put in a number of different things. First of all, what object do I want to destroy? And I want to destroy the game object that this script is on, okay? That it is a component of. So whatever game object this is a component of, I want to destroy it. Now I can also add in here a float, and it says down here a float t. That float t is how long the object will be allowed to be alive. So however long I put in here is how long it's going to be allowed to be left alive. So I'm going to put in here a live time. All right, and I'm going to save this, file save. Now let's minimize that, and I will see destroy me down here, and as long as everything's great, good, a live time has been set. Now I can put in a time here, let's say 2. It doesn't really matter. You're gonna want to give it enough time that all the smoke on the screen dissipates before before you make it disappear, because it'll just cut off all the smoke instantly as well. But watch what happens now. If I say play, right now I can see the projectile down here. If I say play, it shoots off, and after 2 seconds, it's destroyed. All right, one more time. And let's back way up, and you guys will see it destroy. So it shoots off, boom, and after 2 seconds, bam, the entire thing disappears. Now you can see what happened as well. Like I said, the smoke and everything disappeared. So you want to make sure that in this case, your live time is adjusted to the point that the smoke itself will not just suddenly disappear off the screen. Like that, that's not right. Maybe it's going to be fine. We're going to take a look at it later on. We're going to adjust that script in a few minutes to make sure. We're going to just adjust everything, all of our timing, to make sure everything's working the way we want it to. All right. With those things completed, we can now set up this character to be actually be able to fire off the rocket. So the first thing I want to do, I want to go back here to projectile for a second, and I am going to reset this to 0, 0, 0. And that's fine. Right there is fine. And I'm going to save my scene because you know what? You never know, right? You never know. I'm going to take this projectile, the way it's currently set up. It's not finished yet, but we're going to go to our prefabs, and we're going to drag and drop our projectile into prefab. All right, there it is. And after it's there, I can remove it from the scene. What we want to happen is we want our character to fire off that object. We want the character to shoot that object from his gun. So I'm going to go down here to my character, and I've currently got a ground check under there. Just like the ground check, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create an empty child. And I'm going to call this thing here gun muzzle. You can call it anything you want, gun tip, gun muzzle, whatever you want to call it. And basically what this object is going to be, it's going to be where we instantiate, which means create, where we create the projectile to fire from. Okay, and I'm going to go in here, and just like I did before with the ground check, I'm going to add in a, let's make it orange too, just like that one, an orange triangle to be, why can't I grab you? An orange triangle to be where this object is created from. So we're going to put it right here. All right, great. So this location is where I want my actual rocket to shoot from. Sorry, my phone just rang. I know that's really, really rude as a YouTuber, but it did. Okay, so that is where I want the rocket to come out of. So there's a couple things we're going to need to do in order to shoot this rocket out. We've actually got the projectile there. Awesome. What we want to do is we want to make a couple of changes to our actual character. We want to be able to capture the moment that the player controller, double click. So we want to capture the moment that the player fires the rocket. Oh, this graphical thing is bugging me. How did I get rid of it last time? I went like that. Is that what I did? Yeah, good. All right, we want to actually go through and make a couple of changes to be able to fire this rocket out. Now, the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to add a couple of variables in here. So let's go in here and add a comment for shooting. We're going to have, first of all, the location that we want to fire our rocket from. So we've just created that thing, and what we're going to do is we're going to add a public game object. And that we are going to, no, actually, you know what we're going to call it? We're going to do a public transform, because that'll save us a step. A public transform. And basically, it's just saying, instead of going to the game object and then looking for the transform, it's just saying, by saying directly to a public transform, only look at the transform node of whatever game object I put in there. All right? So, it's going to be a public transform, and we're going to call this thing here gun tip. Doesn't really matter what you call it. All right? Or rocket location, or whatever you want to call it. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have a public variable. This time it is going to be a game object, and it's going to be a reference. This is going to be the reference to our actual projectile. So let's call it bullet. Doesn't really matter again what you call it. And we're going to need a couple more things here. First of all, we want to know how fast the character can shoot. So can the character, like, if you hold the button down, is it like a stream of machine gun bullets? Can they only fire once a minute? Like, this is going to be gameplay, so it's going to be up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a float, and you can make this public or private. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to make a private float, and I'm going to call it fire rate, or rate of fire. All right, and let's make this for now 0.5. All right. So that means that my character can shoot one rocket, this is my plan, one rocket every half a second. All right? And lastly, we're going to have to know when the last time that the player fired his weapon was. So the next time he can fire, again, this is going to be a private variable. It's not to be public. And we're going to set it up currently to 0 because we want him to be able to fire right away, 0F. We want him to be able to fire his weapon immediately. All right, and that should be all of the variables that we need. Let me just save this for a second. Save. We have to know a couple other things here. When we've got a few choices, and I think I'm just going to add this in the fixed update rather than update. It doesn't really matter where we put it. You know what? Maybe I'll put it in update. It doesn't really matter where we put it. I'm going to put it up here in update. So what I really want to know Player shooting. All right. What I really want to know is if the player presses the fire button. All right. So what I want to check is if our player has, using the input get axis, just like we did it before. Oops. Input dot get axis, just like we did before. And you can use get axis raw. It doesn't really matter. In fact, we will for this one here. Like I said, get axis raw means only takes a value of -1, a value of -1, 0, or 1. That's what the get axis raw does. And I'm going to use the fire. Fire 1 is what is the axis that I'm going to be using. Fire 1. And once again, guys, we discussed this already. You can go back and you can take a look and see. You can look and see what your axes that are available are. All right, fire 1 is the left mouse button, and I'm going to make sure that they are pressing it. So if fire 1 is greater than 0, or you could say equal to 1, it doesn't really matter because we're using get axis raw. So if it is greater than 0, that means I am pressing the button. All right, and therefore what I want to do is I want to go into and I'm going to write a new script here. Let me close this off. I'm going to say fire. I'm going to write a new script called fire. Fire rocket, I guess, is fine. Fire rocket. All right, so I now have to write a script called fire rocket. So let's go all the way down here. We're going to add it right at the bottom, right below flip. And it's going to be a void, and it's going to be called fire rocket. I pressed the wrong button. Rocket. And it's not going to take any variables. Not going to take any variables at all. And let's write our code. Let's move this down so we can see it better too. All right, let's close this off. Boop. All right, so fire rocket. Now, the first thing we have to check is whether or not we can fire, because we set up the number of times the player can fire in any given time is once every half second. That's what I said above. So the first thing we're going to check is if our current time, so to find the current time in the game is time.time. If time.time is greater than our next fire, what did I call it? Did I call it next fire? What did I call it? I got to remember here. Yeah, next fire. If time.time is greater than next fire, then we can go inside here. That means we actually are going to fire a rocket. First thing we're going to do is we're going to say that next fire is going to be equal to time.time, so the current time, plus the amount of time between our fire, which was our fire rate, right? That's what I called it. Let me just double check. Fire rate. Fire rate, yeah. So our next fire is now going to be equal to the current time plus however much time we're saying is in between every single shot. That's the first thing. Now, we've got a problem here, because if our character can either face left or right, and what we want to do is make sure that they're facing in the appropriate direction. If they are facing to the right, then we want to make sure that our rocket is rotated in the appropriate way. And if they're facing to the left, then we want to make sure that our rocket has been rotated 180 degrees. So it's going to be pointing in the right direction. Now, we already set up our rocket. If we take a look over here, we already set up our rocket to be facing in this direction. We already flipped it once. What I want to make sure is if he's facing left, it's flipped the other way. All right, so let's go back here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to check our facing. And we already have something called, what did we call it? What do we call it? Facing right? Is that what I called it? I went on a vacation, guys, for 1 week. Yeah, facing right. And I'm coming back here and I'm like all flustered. All right, facing right. So if our character is facing right, then what we want to do is we want to create our projectile in its current orientation, because we've already built it as if we were facing right. So we're going to use something called instantiate. And instantiate, why is it not there? Instantiate. I don't know why it's not completing, but it's not. Anyway, we want to instantiate our rocket. And we've already just said what the rocket's going to be. It's going to be something called, where did I put it? Something called bullet. So we want to make sure we call it bullet. Instantiate bullet. And where do we want to instantiate? That's the next question. This is all the things that go in instantiate. Where do we want to actually build it? The next thing, oh, there it is. Good, showed up. The next thing we want to do is we want to instantiate at a vector 3 position. And we already know what that vector 3 position is. That is going to be our gun tip. Our gun tip, yep. That's going to be at our gun tip. our gun tip dot position. All right. Bam. So we've already got a game object. We've already got a transform, called gun tip, and we're going to use a position, and that's where we're going to actually instantiate our rocket. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to give it some kind of rotation. In this situation, we do not need to rotate it in any way. So we are going to do quaternion. Quaternions are not fun. They are actually, quaternion. It's a method instead of using the regular X, Y, and Z rotations, which can lead to something that's called axis lock. We want to actually avoid that, and you can avoid that using quaternions. All right, that's all I'm going to say about quaternions. If you guys are interested in the mathematics behind it, then please feel free to give it a look online. Anyway, we are going to use the Euler function, and we're gonna do it as a new vector 3, because it's in 3 dimensions, a new vector 3, and we are not going to actually have any rotations at all. 0, 0, 0. All right, and it wasn't actually necessary to do it this way here, but you'll see why I did it in 1 second. I'm missing one of these, aren't I? Yes. Bam. All right, so basically the instantiate, which is the meat behind this thing here, this is how we create our rocket. It takes several different variables. The first one is what we're going to instantiate. The second one is where we're going to instantiate it. And the third one is the rotation of that object being instantiated. All right, so we're not going to rotate it at all, and we're going to make it come at the gun tip. The next thing we're going to do, let's close this off. The next thing we're going to do is if we're not facing right. So if we're facing left, because we can only face left or right, else if, and if we're not facing right, else if we are not facing right. All right, if we're not facing right, then what do we want to happen? We want almost the identical thing to happen. We still want to instantiate at gun position. However, what we want to do is we want to instantiate it facing in the opposite direction. So I'm going to rotate this about the z-axis 180 degrees. And I actually used the quaternion Euler so I could actually put degrees in there instead of trying to work out what it was. Anyway, so that is why I used it. So this is basically all we really need to do in order to create our rocket. So what we see here, if we're facing right, it's going to face one way. If we're facing left, it's going to face the other. Let me save this and hope that I typed it all right. All right, I got a parsing error right here. 87.1. Let's see what it was. 87. I'm missing a bracket. Boop. Right there. No biggie. File save. Let's go check this out now. Check my console. No errors. Perfect. Now, if I have done this all correctly, when I push my shoot button, then I should... Oh, no, not yet. I have to set it up. So in here, under player controller, I got to put these things in. I want to go to my player, my character itself, and I want to put gun muzzle in the gun tip location. And my bullet, normally, in order for something to be instantiated or to be able to be placed into an inspector here, it has to be existing in your game. However, if you have a prefab, you can actually drag and drop a prefab in here as well. So what I want to do, basically what I did is I just filled in my two objects, my gun tip transform and what I want to create. Now if I press play, all works well. When I push the button, no, it didn't work. Oh, I have to push it down here, that's why. Sorry. You can't actually make things shoot up here in this screen because you're selecting something. You have to go down to the game itself. Look down here. Boom. My rocket is flying away. All right. I don't really like that rocket trail based on how fast it's going, so I'm going to adjust that later on. You guys will probably have to do the same thing. But there we go, guys. That is it. And right now I get a rocket every half second. All right. And you can see they are appearing and disappearing using the actual destroy me function. So if I turn this guy around, and now when I fire it, oh, I did one thing wrong. Great, and I'm glad we did this. I'm going to stop that. So we actually have the rocket facing the right way. You guys saw when I did that, the rocket was facing the right way. However, what I didn't do, let's go back to our projectile. Let's click on it right here. And, well, it's probably already open still. It is Projectile Controller. We have to make a couple of changes within the Projectile Controller because currently we have our projectile set up so that if when it gets instantiated, this force is automatically applied, and it's automatically applying a force that is going in the to the right, in the direction positive x-axis. Okay, what I want to do is I want to set up something in here. I want to make sure that if my rocket is, well, if my transform of my rocket, and I'm going to be using just the local rotation. So if I have the z, if I have no rotation of the z, so if I haven't actually changed it, then I want it to come in here. So if this value is greater than 0, so in this case, if it's greater than 0, so if I actually have rotation on my z-axis, then I want it to apply a negative force. All right, it's going to be going in the negative direction. If, however, I'm going to put an else in here, else, so if there's no rotation to it, I'm going to be doing exactly the same thing, applying my force, copy, paste it here, paste, in the positive x direction. Now, why did I do this? So, in my player controller, what I did is down here when I instantiated it, I either instantiated it with no rotation, or I instantiated it with 180 degree rotation if I was not facing right. So in this situation, if I'm facing right, I want it to fly right, and if it's facing left, then I want it to fly left. So let me save this, and now let's check it out. So pause this for a second. Actually, I'm going to maximize this on play, and I'm going to play. Great. Now if I push the button, boom, I get a rocket flying. If I turn around the other way, boom, I get a rocket flying. All right, guys, there's a few more things I want to do in order to say we are finished with this rocket. Actually, you know what? No, maybe there's not. I think I'm going to leave it right there. I think that's pretty good, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's pretty good. I was going to go on and have it hit something, but we don't actually have anything for it to hit yet. So there's no reason for me to actually create an explosion right now. And this is a lot. I've given you guys a lot to think about. So what I think I might do is I might make a third video in this portion, in projectile creation, a third video that is about the rocket actually hitting something. I think that's best. All right, guys. So with that said, I hope you enjoyed this episode. In this episode, we created the rocket, the projectile. We added the code for it so it's able to fly off. We are in pretty darn good shape. All right, so guys, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know with a thumbs up. If you didn't, a thumbs down is perfectly fine. If you give me a thumbs down, please let me know why. I'm trying my best here to give you guys the information that you need to be able to create this game. And if I'm not doing a good job of it, you've got to let me know. And that way I can go back and make the changes I need to make. If you have any comments, let me know. Ask your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. All right, guys, thumbs up. Thumbs down, comments down below, and if you haven't done so, please take a few seconds to subscribe. Have yourselves a wonderful day, everyone.